Hey there, this is Jennifer. So glad you're here. Today I have a set of 4 cards, and on these 4 cards I demonstrate several techniques. We'll do a little hack for stenciling large images. We'll do a trick for extending an image to fill a card and change up the look. We'll do some foiling and much more. So I've got a lot on these 4 cards, and I'm hoping that you learn a trick or two. Now, the cards I made today are using the newest Gina K Designs kit. Now, the reason I use her kits often in videos is because of the value. You have a lot in one kit and a lot of different styles in one kit, so you can make a great variety of cards. So this Christmas cheer kit from Gina K has 2 6x8 stamp sets. That's the big size. 1 layering stencil set, dies to cut out all the different images, including the little sentiments, and stencils to help you color in the floral images in the 6x8 set. And I'll be using that top 6x8 set and those coordinating stencils and dies in today's video. Oh, and also there is a layering Merry Christmas die set. Also, right now, I just wanted to mention that Gina K has a great incentive stamp set. If you spend $75 or more, you get this set for as long as they last. But she always has a free gift if you spend $75 or more. It's automatically added to your order. I really like this design. I didn't get it to use in this video, but I hope to use it in the future because I think it's fantastic. So here is a closer look at the 6x8 stamp set, stencils, and dies that I'm using from that kit. Now, I really like that image on the bottom left corner. I thought it was beautiful, and I decided to focus on that for today's video. However, instead of using that stamp, I am going to use some add-on products that she has. She has these add-on Poly-Glaze sheets. Now, these are pre-printed Poly-Glaze. This means that when you put foil on it and run it through a laminator type machine, you'll get a perfect, flawless foiled image with great detail. So I will be using these pre-printed sheets. However, you definitely could use the stamp and do like heat embossing with it for a similar look for today's cards. Now these sheets you can see have like a light gray printing. That is the Poly-Glaze feature. And anytime you put foil on that and run it through a laminator, you're going to get gorgeous foil. By the way, I only got 3 of the 4 sheets that are included in this Poly-Glaze add-on. So do know there is another sheet with more floral images, including the poinsettia, that you can layer up on the bigger image. So what I'm doing here is just cutting out some of the images that I want. I'm going to save some of them for later and use some of them today in creating 4 cards. I actually do the foiling on some of these smaller images, but I didn't even use them today. I really only use the bigger ones, but you'll see me foil the smaller ones too. To do my foiling, I'm using the Gina K Fuse. This is a fantastic tool that does flawless, easy foiling. Now the fuse machine comes with this little carrier sheet. It's like a folded plastic sheet. I'm putting inside of that my Poly-Glaze floral image. And then on top of that Poly-Glaze image, I'm putting a piece of Thermal Web Gold Deco foil. I place the foil with the pretty side up and I run it through the fuse machine, and I have that set to a 3. This will apply heat and pressure, which will cause that gold foil to fuse with that printed Poly-Glaze floral image. And it is flawless. It is beautiful. Now, if you're in an area where you're concerned about dust, you can use a Swiffer cloth to dust anything off before you foil, but I'm lazy and I never do that. And I still get great results. So watch, look at that. Look how gorgeous that is. Such fine detail and gorgeous shine. I'll continue to foil some more images and share some tips as we go. Now you'll notice that when I do this, I'm not trimming my foil down. Part of that is because I'm lazy, and part of that is because I know I can go and cut off the portions that aren't used, like this little piece here, and save that and use it on a different Poly-Glaze image. It's also important to mention that the foil that I'm using here is Thermal Web Deco foil. You do not want to use the foil that you would use with, say, a glimmer machine. It is a different type of foil. I link below to the one I use. It's actually a pack with a lot of gold sheets in it. It's like a value pack, and I have had it for years. I'm continuing to foil the images, this time some smaller ones that I don't end up using, but these are great for using up those little leftover pieces. As for the fuse machine, it is a great tool because you can adjust the amount of heat and you can use it from everything from foiling to laminating. However, if you have a laminator, you definitely can use the Poly-Glaze and this Therm foil and get beautiful results. One of the tricks that I like to do when I'm doing a bunch of foiling is I have two carrier sheets and I get one ready while the other one is running through the machine. So Gina K does sell a pack of extra carrier sheets, and I find this really handy when I'm doing a bunch of foiling. I also wanted to mention that these Poly-Glaze sheets from Gina K are unique to her. The printing on there that holds onto the foil is like a light color, like a light gray, almost white, and I really like that. But do know there are other pre-printed sheets from Gina and other companies that will work in the same way, but the printing is black. It's printed with toner. It's just a different option. Now you'll see in a moment why I like the Poly-Glaze and the fact that it's light. Now after I did all of this foiling, I have all that leftover foil, the negative space of the foil, and I'm going to use that now. This is Therm Deco Foil Toner Sheets. It's just solid black toner. That means that all the foil will stick to all that black. So I'm taking the negative foil space and laying it on top of that black toner sheet. Make sure you cover all of the toner sheet with the foil so the toner doesn't stick inside your carrier sheet. Now I'm going to take this, put it in the carrier sheet, run it through the fuse just like I've been doing. And this will give me the reverse image. Now in this case, because the toner is black, I'll have a black outline image of this floral. And I think this is beautiful. However, there are full Poly-Glaze sheets from Gina K. I ran out, so I couldn't demonstrate it today. If you used a full Poly-Glaze sheet with this leftover foil on top, you would have a white outline showing through because the Poly-Glaze has white printing. So that's just an option, but I think this black is still beautiful. And you can keep going on this. Now I've done a video about how you can keep going on this. It's like the everlasting gobstopper. I will link to that video up here on the top right if you want to check it out. But what you can do is now take a red foil, lay that on top of your gold foil that you've already done, and run that through. And what happens is that black toner outline floral image that was exposed now will grab a hold of that red, and you'll have a red outline image with gold background. So there are so many ways you can use these leftover pieces. And again, please check out that video if you want more ideas. I'm not using this today, but I did save all of those pieces so I can make more in the future. And now, by the way, I have that red negative space that I can use on another toner sheet, and you can just keep on going. So now I have a bunch of gold foiled images, and I'm going to use them on cards, and I'll save some for later. But remember, you could get a similar looking card by using the stamp set. The foiled images and the stamp set are the same size, so the coordinating dies work with both. All right, so let's go ahead and die cut our images using the coordinating dies. I have my Gina K Intri-Cut die cut machine. Gina said this will be back in stock soon, so just stick around if you're still waiting on it. I am also using the Intri-Cut magnetic platform. That helps to hold the die in place as you run it through. Now I will still use a little bit of tape because I really want to make sure that I cut these well. Because of the trick I'm doing with stenciling, I want these to be really positioned nicely inside of that die before I run it through my die cut machine. I also plan to die cut several images at once, and I don't want to accidentally bump one out of place. So this is the Gina K Intri-Cut machine. This is a great manual machine because it has a dial or two dials on the side that allow you to adjust what you're doing, say embossing folder or die cutting, and the amount of pressure needed. So you don't have to have a bunch of different plates. You just have the plates you see me using here, and then you just change the dial depending on what you're doing. I just have mine set to die cutting and it cuts beautifully. The magnetic platform I'm using, that is sold separately, but the other plates come with the machine. So I'll continue to die cut all my pieces and I will keep the negative space. For the stenciling hack that I'm going to share with you, I will be using the negative space of these die cuts. It's time to do the stenciling, and I'm going to do something to the stencils that come with this kit that may cause a little stress for some of you, but I promise for me it's very helpful and it probably will be helpful for many of you. These are the two stencils that come with the kit that coordinate with the stamps and the foiled images, and it colors in the big image and the little images. Now, these are two stencils that just have individual layers on them. So instead of keeping them in full stencils, I'm cutting apart each of the images. I find this easier because I can easily bring it to my project. I don't have to worry about ink being on a different part of the stencil or masking something off. I just think this is so much easier to do. But by all means, the technique that I'm doing today, you could do with full stencil sheets so you don't have to cut them up. But for these type of stencils, I do find this very helpful. For this stencil hack, you'll also need a sticky mat or a grip mat. You could do without one by just using tape, but I find it really helpful to have some sort of sticky mat. Today I'm choosing to use the Simon Says Stamp Tacky mat. If you've watched my videos, I've shared many different options and they would all work for this technique. I'm taking the negative space of the large floral image and just placing it on the sticky mat. If you don't have a sticky mat, you could tape it on your work surface. I really want this to stay put and not move as I'm doing this technique, so I just put a little bit of tape to really secure it. I'm then popping into the opening one of my gold foil die cuts. Now I'll start with one of the images. It really doesn't matter which one. I'm starting with the center of the poinsettia, and I'm lining that little stencil up with the image. I am then taking a piece of tape and creating a hinge on one side. I'm doing it on the left-hand side so the tape isn't on the foil, but it should be fine if it is. So now I have this piece of tape that allows me to flip the stencil over and then place it back down. Now I can ink up this first one. I'm using Gina K Dye Inks, and I'm doing pool colors because that's my favorite color, and it's also Gina's favorite color. I'm starting with sea glass ink, and I'm applying ink over this, and I'm covering the entire floral image with that light sea glass color. Now my ink pads need re-inking, and I need to do that, so you'll notice it takes a little more effort for me to put that color down, but that's my own fault. To give the look of depth, I'm adding the darker Gina K Turquoise Sea to the center of that poinsettia using a smaller blending brush. I'm not taking much effort to blend because these inks will absorb and they'll blend on their own. All right, so now I'll flip that stencil over, take out that die cut, and then pop in the next one. I then can do the stenciling over this one. And with this hack of taping the stencil off to the side, I'm able to easily pop in a new die cut and I don't have to worry about lining it up each time. So this is really helpful if you're doing multiples. Now this hack I've shown in different ways over the years, but this really does work well with layering stencils. Now, if you have a bigger stencil, you could do this right on your work surface and do the same technique. But I just found that with this particular set, cutting the stencils into smaller pieces was really helpful. So I can continue to do that with all four of my floral images. I really like how fast this is, and it's really precise because I have it positioned each time just right. So once I did the center of all the poinsettias, I will take that stencil off. I can wipe it clean. I only have to clean it once thanks to this little hack. And I'll move on to my next mini stencil, which does the back layers of the poinsettia. So I'll pop in my first die cut again, and I will line this up with those outside petals, and I will create a little hinge over there on the left. Now, this time I'll use turquoise sea on the petals and then use a smaller blending brush to put a darker tranquil teal on the inside of the petals. You could definitely save time by only doing one ink color and maybe doing lighter on the tips of the petals and heavier application towards the base of the petals. But I like to just put two colors over it. It takes a little more time, but I like the results and I have the ink. You definitely could save time by sticking with one color. I'm also going back and putting a bit of that darker tranquil teal right at the center of the poinsettia for even more depth. And I will continue to do the same inking on all of my floral die cuts, and I just flip that stencil back and forth each time. Now, I wanted to mention if you don't have a type of sticky mat, You could instead do this on your work surface. Just take the negative space and tape it onto your work surface and put a little bit of temporary adhesive, like with a dot runner, into the opening on your work surface. And then you just pop in that die cut each time, and that will work well too. But if you don't have some type of sticky mat or grip mat or tacky mat, I really encourage you to look into one because it's helpful in so many ways. All right, now I'm moving on to the leaves, and this time I have two leaf stencils that I want to line up. So I'm going to line up both of them at the same time. So one goes over there on the right and one goes here on the bottom. There's actually another leaf up to the top left, but I'm not inking that up at this point because I thought I was going to do so in a different color, but I ended up using the same ink colors. So you could have done all three stencils at the same time. It's okay if the stencils overlap as you see here. All right, so I will do inking over both of them, and I'm using Lucky Clover and Christmas Pine. I cover the leaves with the Lucky Clover, and then I just put a bit of the Christmas Pine at the base of the leaves. You notice I can do both of them here and just flip them over. Then I can take this out and put in my next die cut and repeat the process. So you don't have to do just one stencil at a time. If you're using bigger stencils, it'll just flip over more, right? You can still tape one to one side, one to the other side, and flip them both out. If they're bigger stencils, you probably have to lay one stencil down and ink it up while the other is flipped over, and then vice versa. But you still can do this hinge method, and it really saves you a lot of time. So I'll continue to do all of the leaves and move on to the next mini stencil. So this time I have taped down, creating that hinge, the two rose stencils. So I can color two at the same time. And again, I use the turquoise sea and the tranquil teal together. Now, as I show a bit of this, I wanted to mention this is a great way to make multiples, right? It wouldn't be a big time saver if you were doing one, but if you're making multiples, this is a great option. You could do different colors on each one. What you would do is place your die cut in, do the inking in whatever color you want, as I'm about to do here. Then when you're done with that inking, just take a dry cloth and wipe those stencils off. Leave them in place, but just wipe that ink off and then put in the next die cut and repeat the process with whatever color you want. So you don't have to stick to the same color for every one, but it allows you to create a bunch of images very quickly. These types of stencils that line up to color in a stamped, or in this case, foiled image, are becoming more and more popular. So a hack like this is really helpful. So at this point, I'm really getting the hang of this. So this time I'm putting down 3 mini stencils, and they will all be inked in different colors, but that's okay. You kind of can get the hang of it. Over there on the right, I have my ink pads open, but next to it, just to the right of the ink pad, is the lid. So I know which color each of those are, because it's kind of hard to tell on the ink pad itself. I'm doing lighter colors for the rose or the flower on the bottom. For the berries up top, I'm doing that darker tranquil teal. And then over here on the left, we have the little leaves that I skipped before, and doing that again in Lucky Clover and Christmas Pine. So I can continue to do these 3 images for all of my die cuts, and then we'll be finished. All of our die cuts will be complete and ready to go. And look how beautiful they are with that really detailed foil outline that gives you a ton of shine and the beautiful color on the inside. Okay, now it's time to turn these into cards. And I have some little tricks and hacks to share with you that work with a lot of different products. So I have my 4 floral images here. I'm going to take 2 of them and hold them together, and so they line up nicely. They're just holding them, they're not glued. I then am going to cut them in half down the middle. The reason I'm doing this is I am going to use the 2 halves kind of offset from each other in the background, and it kind of makes the image appear bigger and fills the card even more. So sometimes if you have an image like this and you, instead of doing 2 of them on one card, you can do the trick I'm about to share. All right, now I figured out where the center was nice to cut these. So I'll take the other 2 die cuts and line them up, holding them together, and the other half die cut that I just did. And then I will line up my trimmer blade with that half edge, and that way I'll cut the last 2. So all of these are cut in the same place. So I'll set those pieces aside and let's work on our note card. So I have 4 white note cards that are 4¼ by 5½ inches. And I wanted to do some subtle stamping on the background that would match our foiled floral images. So I'm taking the same image but from the stamp set, and I'll stamp that onto our note card. So first I'm using my T-roller to make light pencil lines right down the center of the card in both directions. This will help me to place the stamp in a way that I can quickly stamp it repeatedly on the background. So let's start by stamping in the top right corner. So I'm lining up the stamp so on the left and the bottom of it, it's right up against that pencil line, the 2 pencil lines I just created. I will then close the door on my MISTI stamping tool, and I can stamp this with whatever ink I want. I thought about doing sea glass, but I decided to switch to Gina K Whisper Amalgam Ink. This is a super light color, so I'll stamp it 2 or 3 times to make it a bit darker. It is great for subtle stamping on white, and it gives a really soft gold look. All right, so now I'll take that card and I'll rotate it. So I'll turn it upside down and stamp in the opposite diagonal corner. And this will help me to start building up a background formed from this image. By the way, this ink is great if you like doing no-line coloring, where you stamp an image, color it in, and you make the outline kind of disappear. I don't ever do that because I'm not good at it, but I love this ink for soft, subtle stamping. It also works for great tone on any color cardstock. So I'll do these 2 corner stampings on all 4 of my note cards. Then I'm moving my note card up to the top corner of my MISTI. I'll place the image on the bottom right corner of the note card, and I'll stamp that using the same ink. Then I can take my card and rotate it and do the stamping on the 4th corner. So now I have stamped this image to cover up this background. And by doing this where I draw the lines down the center, it allows me to turn my note card in my MISTI, making it much faster to cover up cover an entire background with stamped images. The last piece I need to create for these cards is that strip that goes across, and it's 2 pieces of layered cardstock and a gold strip. So I cut some sea glass cardstock from Gina K Designs to 3/4 inch wide. They're longer than I need, but I can trim the excess off. I'm putting liquid adhesive right along one edge of each of these border strips. This is Gina K Connect liquid adhesive in a fine tip bottle. I love this stuff. I then have a 1/4 inch strip of Gina K Turquoise Sea cardstock that I'm putting right along the edge of the sea glass piece. I like this layered look of the strip that will go right along our card. By the way, I really like that Gina's inks match her cardstocks, which match her envelopes. So I was easily able to create this set of 4 cards where everything coordinates nicely. All right, next up, I'll take a thin line of liquid adhesive and put that right up against the edge of the turquoise sea strip. Onto this, I'll place a very thin strip of gold cardstock. I just created this using my trimmer, and this gives me a nice layered look. And I'll do the same for the other pieces. I'm taking one of these strips and putting it into my MISTI stamping tool on the inside edge. And I will line up one of the sentiments, the smaller sentiments from the same Gina K stamp set from the same kit. Now this I'm kind of putting over towards the center right, and I'm stamping with Versamark ink, and then adding Gina K Detail White embossing powder, and I'll heat set that. You could do this in gold embossing powder, but I really wanted it to be subtle because I have a larger foil sentiment that I really want to be the standout. Because of the thickness I cut the strip in, a piece of foam tape works wonderfully along the back, or you could stack up scraps of strips underneath it for that dimension. Now on this particular card, I decided to put this strip kind of towards the bottom at a diagonal and have that sentiment off to the right a bit, the white heat embossed sentiment. That's why I made my strips longer than needed, so I could really play around with where that white sentiment lands on my card. I also die cut another of the large floral die cut from white cardstock, and I'm gluing that to the back of my 2 floral halves. That way there's just a tiny bit of dimension. It kind of lifts it off the note card, but you could skip this layer if you wanted to. I'm gluing 1/2 of our bouquet to the bottom left of our strip and then one to the top right of the strip. So I'm basically taking one image cutting it in half and making it kind of stretch across our card more. And it just gives a completely different look or design to your card than if you kept it whole, like at the center of the card. So you can do this with a lot of different images you have, especially florals. And it really is just a great way to stretch your supplies, kind of literally, and get a different look. Once I have those glued in place, I will take my sentiment. This is the Merry Christmas foiled image. I did die cut 2 additional die cuts and glued it to the back so it's nice and strong because it's going to be over that dimensional border. So I'll put some foam tape at the back top of the Merry Christmas, liquid adhesive at the back bottom, and then put it right there up against the strip near where that white heat embossed sentiment starts. And once I'm done with that, I can flip it over and cut the excess of the strip and the floral images off the edge. So at this point, I wanted to make my second card, but I didn't want to use the same design on all 4 cards. So each one is a little bit different, but they all use the same elements: a foiled sentiment, a border layered strip, and the 2 halves of the floral images offset. So this time I'm making a vertical card or a portrait card and putting the border towards that left-hand side. Now I still have my stamp, my little sentiment stamp, in my MISTI stamping tool, so I'm going to go ahead and white heat emboss that same sentiment on each of the strips. I could have done all of these at the same time, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to have it on the other cards, but I decided in the end to add it. So because it's in my MISTI stamping tool, I can just do all of those strips stamped very quickly. Now I completed the other cards, just changing up the design, but really using the overall same kind of style, I guess you would say. So these all go together very nicely. You could do a card set and give these as a gift, or you could just send these to other people. When I mass produce cards for holidays, I like to change them up a little bit just so I don't get bored, and this is a fun way to do that. At this point, I'm using my Gina K pickup stick to pick up little gold pearls and add them kind of scattered on each of the cards. This gold draws out the foil that we have on our floral outline image and on the sentiment. And of course, I chose to use a matching envelope for my cards. I love using colored envelopes. It's a nice way to kind of finish off your card. These are turquoise sea envelopes from Gina K Designs, and I stamped that matching floral image on the back using turquoise sea ink. So here is a look at our 4 cards. I'm curious which of the 4 you like the best, like which angle the flowers and the strip are placed in. I'm not really sure which one I like the best. I think it's fun to change up the design each time. So you can see that subtle stamping in the background that matches that bold foiling on that image that we cut in half. And by offsetting the 2 halves of the image, we stretch it to give it a different look for our card. I also like how that white heat embossed sentiment just adds a subtle interest to the card, but you could skip it if you wanted to. I also have the gold pearls that match the foil and the gold foil cardstock strip that all pulls together nicely. I wish you could see the foil in real life on these because the shine is outstanding. I know foiling isn't for everyone. Do know there are foil options that are matte finish if you don't want as much shine, or you could recreate this card just using black stamping for that floral image that we cut out or cut in half. You have many options, and you could do these techniques with products you have on hand. So there you go, a set of 4 holiday note cards ready to go using a few little tricks and hacks. I hope that this was helpful to you, inspires you to break out your supplies and do some creating. If you're interested in what I used today, I have them linked below in my YouTube description, and I also have links to the videos I mentioned there. At the end here, I will link to a couple of those videos and to my blog, which has a lot more information. If you haven't done so, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you'd like, because that is an easy way to let YouTube know that you want to see more videos like this from me, and it's very helpful. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great day. We'll see you again in another video.